We are here to honor them, to lift their names, and to continue the
To lift their names. What the F does that mean? When your job is to deal with violent criminal predators in your society,
intergenerational work that we are required to do to eliminate structural racism.
So we've been dealing with this intergenerational work for generations. What's it gotten us? If you're a white person, what's it gotten you? Anything? What's it gotten black people? Because we really have two choices. Is we take the people who've identified themselves as violent criminal demons and imprison them early in their criminal careers to keep the rest of society, ourselves, our wives, our daughters, safe from these demons. Or we just choose to have them live amongst us like mentally retarded lions, which strikes me as a poor plan, which is what we've been doing for decades. And what's it gotten us? Has it ever gotten better? I'm just advocating that young black men who commit violent crimes be treated the same as young white men who commit violent crimes. They're imprisoned for long periods of time, or worse. I'm just advocating that when we know someone's a violent predator, we've identified them, that we don't fail to prosecute, convict, and imprison just because they have dark skin and their victims were white. Let's treat all the violent criminals the same, regardless of their race. Now, that inevitably means our prisons are going to be packed with those demographics that commit the large proportion of violent crime. And that's just too bad. This demon that killed this woman on the train, 14 violent crime interactions with law enforcement. The cops are doing their job. He was arrested 14 times. What more do you want them to do? And in that same county that released him 14 times, there are political activist groups funded by left-wing NGOs, by the MacArthur Foundation, by George Soros, electing soft-on-crime prosecutors who advocate, who pay politicians money to carry through on promise to release black people from prison because they're black, regardless of what violent crimes they may have committed. And I don't think we're doing that anymore. I think that's over. So, of course, not all black people, but a disproportionate percentage of black people, 50-fold more than white people, are committing these horrific acts of violent crime. Are we just supposed to allow our wives and daughters to be murdered and raped, ourselves to be assaulted and murdered? Is there anybody, is there a white person in America that doesn't have a personal experience of being attacked by a black person? Anybody? Really? All the way back to childhood? Never once? So what I'd like to talk about in today's show is this red pill moment, is this shift in conversation within our American society about this. Because we really have two choices. Our two choices is we take the people who've identified themselves as violent criminal demons and imprison them early in their criminal careers to keep the rest of society, ourselves, our wives, our daughters, safe from these demons. Or we just choose to have them live amongst us like mentally retarded lions, which strikes me as a poor plan, which is what we've been doing for decades. And what's it gotten us? Has it ever gotten better? I'm just advocating that young black men who commit violent crimes be treated the same as young white men who commit violent crimes. They're imprisoned for long periods of time, or worse. I'm just advocating that when we know someone's a violent predator, we've identified them, that we don't fail to prosecute, convict, and imprison just because they have dark skin and their victims were white. Let's treat all the violent criminals the same, regardless of their race. Now, that inevitably means our prisons are going to be packed with those demographics that commit the large proportion of violent crime. And that's just too bad. I think we're tired of the whining about it.
So if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, according to this poll, not according to me, according to this poll, that's a hate group. That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with them. And I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the fuck away. Wherever you have to go, just get away. Because there's no fixing this. This can't be fixed, right? This can't be fixed. You just have to escape. So that's what I did. I went to a neighborhood where, I have a very low black population. So I think it makes no sense whatsoever as a white citizen of America to try to help black citizens anymore. It doesn't make sense. It's no longer a rational impulse. It makes no sense to help black Americans if you're white. It's over. Don't even think it's worth trying.
If you're a Christian white parent who loves the Lord and loves your children, that you need to have the talk. The talk that we're referencing is the talk that takes your children according to their maturity at the proper time, the appropriate time, and says, there are certain parts of town that you cannot go. And there are certain people that you cannot be around.
Yep.
Right? If there's someone who is black in our church, and they've been in our church, and we know them, and they love the Lord Jesus Christ, great. We're not talking about that person, right. But we're talking about when you go into a crowd of people. If you go into a crowd of strangers, and they're white strangers, there's some danger. If they're black strangers, there is 30 times more danger. Them's the facts. And it is actually a failure of your parental duty. White parents, please hear me. If you teach your children growing up, if you lie to them and say, all people and all races of people in our country are the same. They are not. You are actually depriving your child of factual, truthful information that could save their life.
So look at Scott Adams there. Look at that pastor, Joel Webban. I think a lot of people are starting to take that attitude, or worse. A lot of people are taking Scott Adams' advice and have been all their lives. I would say you could safely describe the U.S. real estate market as largely being an effort by people to distance themselves and their families from violent crime, which they statistically correctly associate with large concentrations of black men. Is that not what they're doing? Scott Adams said it explicitly. He moved to a community with a very low population of black people to avoid violent crime. Is he statistically incorrect? But other people will caution that's a short-term solution for you, Scott. I'm doing the same thing for political purposes. I'm fleeing another state. I fled the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that liberal hellhole, moved to Colorado 8 years ago when Colorado was still a purple state, and it's gone hard blue. So now I'm fleeing Colorado. I've got to upend my family again. And we're moving to Tennessee. And I'm just trying to keep a few years ahead of the crazy. But of course, if we all do that, then the crazy just chases us down and stabs us in the back. And a lot of people are cautioning, look, you can't run forever. At some time they come to you. And then what? This is from Jesse Waters. This is about how this particular guy who stabbed Iryna Zarutska on the train, how he came to be on that train as a known violent predator, 14 times arrested, repeatedly released with no conditions, without bail. He served prison terms for violent crime before. They were too short, 3 years, 3.5 years, and he's back out cutting the necks of white women on trains. Have you seen the full video? I'm not going to show it. It's too tragic. I don't have the heart for it. He repeatedly stabs this woman in the neck a bunch of times and kills her, and she's not yet dead. She's mortally wounded. Knife wounds do that a lot. She's mortally wounded, but she's not yet dead. She's sitting in that chair, bleeding out internally, crying, sobbing, weeping, and then her blood pressure drops and she falls over and she dies. But the last few minutes of her life was spent knowing she was a dead woman. If she had been instantly transported to an ER surgery, they could not have saved her. That's what these demons do. All right, let's watch this little Jesse Waters clip about some of you hear about systemic racism all the time, right? This, my friends, this is systemic. Let me pop up the volume here. All of this, all we're going to hear about here is the result of a broken system.
This is Teresa Stokes, a Harris donor who doesn't even have a law degree, but just made a career criminal and a schizophrenic who beat his own sister when he was out on parole. Pinky promised that he'd behave. Ms. Stokes wasn't elected. She was nominated by the clerk. In Mecklenburg County, the sitting clerk is Alyssa Chin Gary. On her LinkedIn page,
anyone seeing a pattern yet?
She calls herself a clerk and a DEI consultant and a racial equity organizer.
Racial equity organizer. Are we going to get race blind justice? from people like this. Look at that black robe.
And her life mission?
She's a court clerk. She's wearing the black robe of a judge. It's all play theater for them. They're like not very bright children role playing as adults. There's no reason. There's no rationality. There's no principle here except whatever satisfies them emotionally.
We are here to honor them, to lift their names, and to continue the...
To lift their names. What the F does that mean? When your job is to deal with violent criminal predators in your society, whose names are you lifting up?
Intergenerational work that we are required to do to eliminate structural racism.
So we've been dealing with this intergenerational work for generations. What's it gotten us? If you're a white person, what's it gotten you? Anything? What's it gotten black people? Most of the black crime is committed against black people. What's it gotten anybody except DEI royalty like this? The handful who get a clerk's position and put on a judge's robe.
Ms. Stokes was nominated by Judge Carla Archie. Judge
Anybody see a pattern?
Archie is friends with Eric Holder.
Oh my
Obama's
gosh.
wingman. And Judge Archie isn't just any judge. In 2019, she was the DEI champion of the year. Is this starting to make sense? Did a woman die
Is this starting to make sense, folks? Have you taken the red pill?
because of DEI? Just a couple months ago, a guy shot 5 people on New Year's, and Judge Archie sentenced him to a year and a half for shooting 5 people, a year and a half. This is a DEI court, and they have blood on their hands.
A year and a half in the training institute we call a prison. I'm sorry, folks. If you're put in prison for 20 years, it's prison. If you're put in prison for a year and a half, it's a year and a half bettering yourself. A free gym, getting trained by the other inmates who are passing through, maybe a new gang membership. A year and a half prison sentence is nothing but a training opportunity for criminals.
And if the people in robes are on the same side as the bad guys, that's suicide. Are you okay with the country committing judicial suicide? I'm not. DEI died when Kamala lost. It's illegal. And releasing felons with dozens of arrests for social justice is a crime against the country. They've set up these dangerous DEI courts in cities nationwide, catching and releasing criminals to prey on innocent people. These courts need to be systematically dismantled, and that needs to happen immediately.
You know what we need? If a police officer, an agent of the government, uniform, badge, under color of law, denies someone their civil rights, there's a federal statute, Section 1983 of the Federal Code, that says anyone who's been denied their civil rights under color of law can sue that local police officer in federal court. And when they win, the other party has to pay their legal costs. We need something like that for these victims and the families of victims to bring a cause of action, a federal lawsuit against these judges who release these criminals under color of law. That's the only way they'll be held accountable, because otherwise these are just locally elected officials. The people of Charlotte elect these clowns, all of them. It's unbelievable. The system of government that works for a high trust, triple IQ people does not work for everybody, folks. It wouldn't work in the third world. That's why it doesn't work with third world people, ever. And we have a lot of domestically grown third world equivalents living in America. John Adams said, our Constitution, meaning our whole society, structured by the Constitution, was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Some people cannot rule themselves. They can't. Look at this. The universal franchise is a fool's errand and a society's demise. Our founding fathers would be rolling in their graves, thinking that dummies like this not only get to vote, have a hand on the tiller of government and society, but are put in positions of authority so they can do what? Make decisions like this? A year and a half in prison for shooting 5 people? A violent criminal arrested 14 times, let out again and again and again? The prize is DEI, racial justice, intergenerational systemic racism. Scott Adams says this can't be fixed. If it can't be fixed, it's all over. but it certainly cannot be fixed with the tools we currently have. We need different tools. We need some way to hold these people accountable. And if it's not going to happen at the local level, it needs to happen on the federal level. We should not have regions in America that are the equivalent of third world, war-torn environments. You know, this happens a lot to European tourists to America. Americans know this. Americans know you live in a city. You know where not to go. In Boston, it was Dorchester and Roxbury. You just don't go there. That's where the violent crime is. The rest of Boston was amazingly safe. What did Dorchester and Roxbury have in common? That's where the Black population was concentrated in the city of Boston. If you live in Boston, you know that street, you don't go to the left of that street. But if you're a tourist, Boston's a walking city. They would walk around all over the place, and they didn't know the magic line not to cross. And sure enough, they'd be victimized. They'd become prey. Why do we allow this? And of course, these are not isolated events. This is not a one-off. I mentioned yesterday, you could have a YouTube channel that was nothing but Black attacks on white people. Here's just another example. Today's the 5th anniversary of the infamous murder of Cannon Hinnant, 5 years old, by his next-door neighbor, Darius Sessions, in Wilson, North Carolina. The boy was playing with his 2 older sisters in his yard when he crossed into this Black man's yard and was executed for it. And you know what the Black man said his justification was? Well, the kid said the N-word. Anybody believe that? Anybody believe the parents of this 5-year-old don't desperately wish that they had lived someplace else and not next to this demon? And this happens tens of thousands of times, over and over and over and over again.